Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Easy Cinematic Escape on YouTube. Today's review is based off the 1997 romance epic disaster film, Titanic. Directed by James Cameron, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, Billy Zane, Bill Paxton. And the film, by 1997 standards, to kind of give you a better impression of what this form of cinema meant in 1997. This film was everywhere. I mean, you cannot escape it. You literally most likely could be somewhere down in the trenches away from civilization, beneath the bottom of the ocean. And for some reason, you still would have found a way to have heard about this film just because of how impressive it was by a cinematic standpoint and just the overall impact that it had on the culture at that specific point in time. James Cameron, for all intents and purposes, is a visionary when it comes to cinema. Anyone who is familiar with his work knows that he did Piranha, Aliens, Terminator 1, Terminator 2, True Lies, of course, Titanic, Avatar. Now, when I say Avatar, I mean the really good Avatar with the blue aliens, not the Avatar, The Last Airbender, that was directed by M. Night Shyamalan. But that's another story. James Cameron, prior to Titanic, was primarily known for his action-adventure science fiction extravaganza films that became monumental blockbusters for summer events. And to hear about him directing a film that's based off the historical tragic landmark of the Titanic and the sinking of Titanic, essentially, and how he managed to incorporate a very intricate and sincere love story with a historical event really gives you a testament to exactly how talented he is and just how he's able to be that much of a compelling artist by creating this cinematically impressive and inspiration and even influential film that still has maintained a strong core audience throughout the duration of its existence. And when you think about it, what does Titanic, Gone with the Wind, and Avengers Endgame, what do they all have in common? They all have essentially ruled the box office and have become the highest grossing films of all time. But I have to give the edge, as much as I love Endgame, I have to give the edge to Titanic just because I think it's much more cinematically impressive to a certain degree. And it came out at a time when ticket prices weren't as expensive as they are now. And you have to think about the audience. It was a constant repeat audience through that respective year. While Endgame did manage to attain that record, I have to say I do believe that Titanic is still going to be a far more influential film, and more people will continue to talk about it throughout later on in years. So again, it's not taking anything away from Endgame. That's just my honest opinion on the exception. I love all three films, but I have to give the edge to Titanic simply because I think, like I said, it's going to be that type of film that still to this very day people are going to talk about and most likely expose their children's children to. And just it's to me, it's just far more impressive when I really think about the technological and the state-of-the-art landscape that James Cameron used in order to create the overall, period piece that makes this film so monumentally meaningful and special. The film is more or less a love story that is set in 1912. You have these two characters the actors and actresses, and Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet playing these two lovers that, they meet on the opposite ends of the spectrum. You have Jack Dawson, who is, for all intents and purposes, he is this drifter trying to find his place in the world and just happens to be on the Titanic, who is poor and has nothing going for himself, at least at that point in time, is just seeking to explore the world. You have Kate Winslet's character, Kate Bukater, I guess that's the best, I guess that's how you pronounce her last name, so please do not be mad at me, who is engaged to this rich, aristocratic, arrogant, mean-spirited man played by Billy Zane, who I think he captures that character. He plays a character of an individual who believes he has everything figured out to an absolute T. He plays Cal Hockley, who is, like I said, an absolute snob, and he just portrays that role perfectly. When I first watched Titanic, at that point in time, I did not necessarily care about the film overall. All I cared about was wanting to see exactly how they were going to replicate or even envision the whole sinking of the Titanic, and how it was historically revered as the ship that was literally unsinkable. And at the time when it was out theaters, I did not watch the film in theaters because in the process we were getting ready to move from California to Shaw Air Force Base. Excuse me. And when I first watched the film, to kind of give you an impression of how long ago it was on 2 VHS cassette tapes. And anyone who's familiar with VHS cassette tapes, films that were essentially long in length, and when I say long in length, I'm talking about 3 to 4 hours long. It was always like on two VHS cassette tapes. And I rented it from our local video store on the base one day just because I had nothing to do and I didn't know anybody and I had nothing else to watch at that time. I watched Titanic and I sat there for 3 hours just to watch the ship go down. And in a way, it really goes to show you how monumentally impressive, entertaining, and sincere it is just by having a love story and still having the characters to be that much more interesting, and still keep you emotionally engaged with the story, despite the fact that all you cared about, at least for me in particular, cared about was the ship going down. And the fact that I sat for 3 hours just to watch the ship go down, to me explains exactly how talented James Cameron is as a director and as a writer. From a performance standpoint, there is a lot of emotional moments, however, but when you really think about it, I don't think it's really so much about the performances, if that makes any sense. I think you're just completely in awe of the complicated set design and how realistic everything looks, and then how they literally, I mean, when you really think about it, the problem with a lot of cinema these days is that everything is relied on CGI. There's hardly any true set designs. There's no one building into these elaborate designs in order for people to really be immersed with something that is completely realistic. Whereas James Cameron, his crew, along with himself, I mean, they literally built a replica of the RMS Titanic. I mean, literally built this design, and they actually, with the combination of practical effects and computer generated imagery, they were able to replicate as best as they could the sinking of the Titanic, and it looks beautiful. Still to this very day, it looks very realistic, very traumatizing. It's just absolutely astounding as to how they were able to capture that intense moment in history. I mean, for all we know, I mean, obviously none of us were even thought of during that respective year. But to really just kind of give you an impression of exactly how I get tragic and intense it was, is you still feel that moment. You still within that fear of knowing that they are literally going to their impending doom, and to me, that's also a testament of how wonderfully engaging that this film is. I guess the best way to put it is Titanic is still a very good film. Now, you have a lot of people who will make fun of it just because of how long it is, and it's a love story, and how there's a lot of memes going around, especially particularly with Jack and Rose towards the end. And it has been parodied through all mediums of popular culture. And anyone who's familiar with Anna Gasteyer, who was a very popular Saturday Night Live alumni, she did a parody of Celine Dion's "My Heart Will Go On," and how at the time a lot of individuals, critics, and fans were labeling her as very mean-spirited. But people need to understand that song "My Heart Will Go On" was everywhere, much like the film. And as great of a song as it is, it was to the point to where you were tired of it. Now, I could listen to the song and never get tired of it because I still love that song, and I love Celine Dion in general. But yeah, that song was everywhere, and it fits Titanic to a T. I mean, you just can't go wrong with it. Anyone who is remotely offended by Anna Gasteyer's portrayal and dialect of Celine Dion's performance, if anyone wants to truly be offended, I highly recommend that you go to an Applebee's or a bar that has karaoke night and listen to someone. This is coming from someone who is not a trained singer either, but listen to someone other than Celine Dion trying to sing "My Heart Go On" is probably one of the worst offenses that you will ever hear in your life, and that is a little bit of humor for this review. But yeah, seriously, I do mean that. You want to hear something offensive, just listen to someone try to sing that song that's not a trained singer. It is not pretty. But overall, I have to give Titanic. It is still it's still a great film. I will say it's one of those type of films that I don't believe that you could watch repeatedly just because you have this. It's the type of film that you have to sit there and recognize that, okay, I have to take at least 3 or 4 hours out of my day just to watch it. Same with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But when you do watch it, it's still emotionally and spiritually and inspirationally engaging. And I can honestly say that to this very day, I had never been bored with it. I watched it the other night when I was streaming it for friends of mine on my Discord, and I sat there throughout the entire duration of the film, and that did not move. I still love it. It's still a great film, and that was the first time I had watched it in a few years, if I'm not mistaken. So I have to really give props to James Cameron for creating such a wonderfully well organized, put together film that is still this, I guess, the quintessential definition of being a state of the art cinema. And I don't think anything's ever going to come close to what he did. And in actuality as well, it also propelled Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet into the stratosphere of superstardom as far as being successful actors and actresses is concerned. I mean, it put them on the map. It deserves all the accolades and all the praise that it has received throughout the years. And like I said, the fact that people still talk about it is letting you know the absolute pure brilliance and a testament to its existence. And I cannot sing it enough praises. It's just a wonder. It's still one of the greatest films ever made. And while it may not be on my list as favorites, it may not be on the top of my list as a favorite film of mine, just because that honor goes to Starman and Halloween still, but it is still one of the greatest films ever made. I mean, you can't go wrong with it. I highly recommend it. That is my review of Titanic. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I do apologize for not being around as much. Things have been pretty hectic as well with school and work, and I'm in the process of working out again, so I apologize. But anyone who is interested in watching any films that has a similar premise to it, that is considered, your monumental epics, I do recommend, obviously, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, obviously Titanic, Braveheart, Goodfellas, Ben-Hur. I mean, it's just Godfather 2. Just anything that is ultimately going to really have you mentally and emotionally engaged and cinematically involved with the overall material. Those are the films that will hold a similar mindset to exactly what you're looking for. But that is my review of Titanic. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and you'll be hearing from me again soon. I have to say my final score of this film would be a 5 out of 5 for everything involving the acting, the music, the set design, and the overall atmosphere. And how it's a complete narrative retelling of a tragic historical landmark told through a love story. And that is my review. Here, take care, my friends, and peace out.